creative woman. I'm so glad you're here. I want to talk today about your creative ambition and what that means to your life purpose. Creative ambition must include your intention to act creatively on your values. If you've struggled with taking action on your values, this episode is for you. Our goal here at the Modern Creative Woman podcast is to bring you the best information, the art and the science of living your most authentic and creative life. We all know there is more to life than just science or just art. We have to rely on an integrated approach that embraces both. And we have to be anchored in both our creative sides and what the best of science and psychology has to offer. The knowledge I'm sharing with you is designed to help you wake up and embrace a creative existence and be able to tackle whatever challenges come your way and build a life that you just adore waking up to. So let's get into this. Let's get this started. I am having the time of my life inside the Modern Creative Woman membership this month. It has been so invigorating for me since I came back from Paris. I brought back so many fun new ideas. I got so much inspiration, and I love sharing creativity. It's been really amazing. And I'm already planning my writing retreat for myself coming up. And I've got a in-person one-day retreat in San Francisco in January. And if you want to get in on this, I've got a waiting list going. I'll have more information soon. Shoot me a message. I can give you the date and a little bit more information, but right now it's a waiting list. And the Paris trip in July is already starting to fill up. If this is on your bucket list, now is the time to secure your spot. I would love to be able to support you on whatever stage of your journey you are in. And transition is a lifetime process. We are always in a state of change. So if you're thinking it's time to make a little bit more of a commitment to yourself and invest in making the change go in the direction that you most want, get inside the membership. You have an immediate community and you've got some incredible classes. I really do bring the best of the art and science to you. There's creative writing, of course there's art making, and I do give a college lecture a couple times a month. You'd be pretty excited to be a part of that community. I know I'm happy to be in there. Have you ever wondered what your purpose on earth is? You are not alone. Philosophers, educators, theologians have been talking about and pondering this question for a millennia. And women often struggle with this question as well, wondering if they're supposed to be something. Are they supposed to be a mother? Are they supposed to be a partner? What does that look like for an individual woman when there's so much confusion and pressure and, frankly, opinions by people who don't have an influence on our life? So sometimes we begin to believe in our vision and our purpose, and society or practicalities or feels like finances or limitations on what's happening and our obligations can come in and put a damper on our ambition to live our purpose. Now, there's certainly a lot of aspects of the world that can make it challenging. However, I want to help you with one area in particular that can really help you kind of take care of some of these other barriers. And I'm talking about the ambition to live your purpose and the mindset that it's worth your while and it's worth your time and energy to go ahead and pursue it, regardless of what anyone else has to say about it. And certainly regardless of what society is expecting us to be Now, ambition to live your purpose, take action on it, experience it as a whole body phenomenon, as a day-to-day experience, as a way that you live your life, not just something you tap into for 20 minutes a day. It requires that we let go of the parts of the story that paint us as someone who is lacking agency in our choices. Agency is the sense of control that you feel in your life, your capacity to influence your own thoughts and behaviors. It's also having faith in your ability to handle kind of whatever comes your way, a wide range of tasks or situations. Agency is trusting yourself that you can handle it. Now, certainly there are times when we seem to lack agency, and there are situations when our attitude seems like the only place that we have agency. And I've referred often to Viktor Frankl and logotherapy as how we can have agency even in very dire circumstances. Even if we cannot control our own physical movements, people can develop their own inner agency, their inner boundaries, and their inner strengths. So if you think of your personal agency story as a continuum, it can range from passive to aggressive, and in the middle is what I call healthy agency. So a passive experience is one where we feel like a victim. It could be a victim of circumstance, of what's happened to us, of our past, of where we live. It brings up feelings of hopelessness, inaction, anger, can lead us to feel lonely and isolated, and non-collaborative. When we feel like we're a victim and there's nothing we can do about it, we often stop looking for a community. We think, oh, well, there's nothing that can be done. I guess this is just how it is. And that is not mindfulness or accepting what is. That's a depressed state of mind. It's a victim stance. And when we're in it, it's hard to see alternatives. Now, there's also an aggressive stance towards agency, and that's really fear-based. It's this urge to be right and thinking that being right is more important than relationships or community or justice. That kind of aggressive agency is taking action that's trying to control others. It's avoiding personal responsibility. It's blaming others. It's all top down. People who have this aggressive sense of agency believe that what they think and do is right and everyone else is wrong. It is also a non-collaborative stance. Let's talk about healthy agency, which is where we all want to be. It's collaborative. It uses our relationship to ourselves and community to grow and heal and offer support to ourselves and others. This is where creative ambition lives. It's active. It's also assertive. Not aggressive, but assertive. When we're in our healthy agency, we know what we want and we can assert influence to take action on that. Healthy agency is also receptive. It receives support from others. It believes and has faith in our own sense of creativity. And it's also hopeful. And if you find yourself spending more time in that passive victim stance or in that aggressive, fear-based, controlling stance, I hope you'll consider that you don't have to stay there. You can get support, and that's the most important thing you can do if you find yourself feeling hopeless or helpless, or you find yourself lashing out, wanting to control things. Those are both situations that are just begging for community support, personal support. They're calling out for you to take action on your own creativity. Really, that passive victim story is a thought fusion, and that's when we start to believe our thoughts as facts. And someone in that victim story is seeing all the experiences, good or bad, as just happening to you. It feels lonely, isolated, and it often involves a real lack of boundaries. Letting others do as they wish, saying, okay, I'll eat whatever, that's fine. Being very non-assertive. That aggressive stance is really self-protective. It comes from a place of fear. The actions are in isolation because people fear that there's no one there to support them. It really points to an area of growth about learning to be receptive of health and community. And I like to think of healthy agency as including assertive communication with others, that actions are based on values, willingness, healthy boundaries, and of course, relational ethics. And relational ethics is considering the impact of our action on others and making the choice that is best for us that doesn't hurt others. It can be best for community, but not in a way that diminishes our own creativity or our own creative ambition. It's not putting everyone else first. It means considering the big picture. Now, do you recognize yourself in any of these three categories? Well, we could be in any of these categories around different topics. We may feel passive about a certain situation, or we may feel aggressive about a different situation. What I'm hoping for you to consider is how to get into that healthy middle ground using your creativity and avoiding falling helpless to a victim stance or acting out, lashing out. So if you call to mind your healthy, boundaried, considered situations where you're moving towards your values, ideally we can take that and apply it in all the areas of our life. When I think about that passive story, it requires sometimes a little effort to recognize it because it does feel so hopeless. That passive story can just feel like life is happening to us. It falls in line with fatalism, that everything's already predetermined, there's nothing I can do about it. Now, there is this benefit to a passive story, and it often comes from childhood where it was safer to be quiet and it was safer to not assert ourselves into a situation. But there is an advantage that can linger, and it can feel kind of addictive as adults. If we're in that victim stance or that passive story, we feel completely free to avoid accountability or responsibility because there's nothing we can do. Nothing is our fault. There's no responsibility. And that urge for no responsibility is such a primitive state. It's one of the earliest psychological defenses that Freud wrote about, regression. When we weren't responsible for anything, we often have a wish to live in a simpler time where we didn't have so many responsibilities. Have you ever had that thought? I certainly have. That's a wish for regression. And living in a victim story, creating an environment where we are the victim, is avoiding responsibility. And again, I'm not talking about a position where we actually are being victimized. Certainly, women are being victimized a lot, all around the world. I'm talking about the inside, the stories that we tell, and how we talk to ourselves. That victim story can also be an attempt to avoid or control or escape reality. And if you're saying, yeah, but Amy, that can't be right. It's true, I really am a victim. It may be true that you were victimized at one point, or you're living in a situation or experiencing something that has a lot of injustice. Of course. I'm not suggesting you avoid the reality and the social structures that can give the impression of real distress and anxiety as a requirement of us. I'm just talking about that inner experience. And when we choose to think like a victim, it helps us feel good in the moment because we're not to blame for what's happening. And it's true, we're not to blame for racism or sexism or any other kind of discrimination. We're just responsible for managing what's happening to us on the inside. Focusing on the parts we can't do anything about helps us avoid shame. We don't have to decide anything. And in that passive story, the worst parts of perfectionism shows up. It's not taking action for fear of making a wrong choice. Have you ever vacillated in indecision? I don't know what to choose. I don't know what my passion is. I don't know what my purpose is. The fear of choosing wrong is a thought. There is no right or wrong. It's your choice. It's just choosing and allowing yourself to make the choices about what's important to you. There is no right or wrong when you're choosing what matters to you. So I want to help you identify where this may be showing up for you, because there's a situation that maybe this is getting to you where the passive story is making you feel helpless. So here's some examples of things I've heard women tell me. Nothing ever goes right for me. It's not my fault. I just can't win no matter what I do. Why does this always happen to me? Just waiting for the other shoe to drop. I can't do anything about it. It is what it is. How about this one? If only other people would change, things would get better. I'm sure we've all said that one. Here's some more. My boss hates me. My husband chose me. That is unfair, and I don't know what to do. If you've ever said any of these, that might be a clue that in that experience, you're telling yourself a passive story about the situation. Now, I just gave you a lot of benefits, how it just kind of makes us feel better to have that passive story. And now I want to tell you the cost. We pay a hefty price when we engage in that passive story. There's a loss of belief in our purpose. We get confused. We don't know what our purpose is. We are keeping ourselves from others. We're failing to reveal ourselves in a way that will allow us to find our community. If you're into art or philosophy or religion, or you just like to draw, or you want to bake, or you like to garden, but you don't make time for it, then you're keeping yourself from your community. There are people out there waiting to meet you because they are looking for others with that same interest, with that same passion. A huge cost of embracing that passive story is we dim our light. We fail to make our contribution that only we can make. Here's some more costs. Dissatisfaction, frustration, doubt, anger and rage, and physical health consequences. So we've all engaged in that passive victim story from time to time. We don't have to judge ourselves for it. It's a very strong psychological wish to regress. There's nothing that we can do about punishing ourselves or berating ourselves. The last thing I want you to do is berate yourself for having these thoughts. It's just making yourself a victim again. Oh, I just can't help it. I don't want you to do that. I just want you to be aware of the story when it comes up. And here's the secret. When it comes up, you don't have to act on it. That's not the voice for your creative ambition action. It's just a voice. It's not the one you want to listen to when you're considering taking action. And I want to talk a little more about the aggressive story. And aggression is in all kinds of art. It's in film constantly, television. It's also in fine art. It's in literature. It really is something that is expressed widely in the creative arts. So I want to talk about recognizing the aggressive story, because so often women are afraid of being perceived as aggressive. And so we tend to retreat more often into that victim spot. I'm not speaking for everyone, but just sort of a general sense of it. There is this external shaming for a woman who is too aggressive. And society doesn't like an aggressive woman. And there's plenty of examples, I'm sure, in your life or in the lives of your friends and family where aggression was responded to as a tool to control a woman. That a woman who is assertive is told she's aggressive. And so we get confused. Wait, am I being assertive? I'm being aggressive? I thought I was just being assertive. And being called aggressive is so often used as a control strategy by others to stop women from being assertive or taking action or speaking up. So I want to honor the aggressive story. It's not where we want to live, but there are times when our assertiveness is moved into this other direction where it becomes aggressive. So let's talk about how to recognize when we're telling ourselves an aggressive story. When we're fused with the idea that we are right, or there's only one right way of doing things. A funny example where I started to notice this for myself is I thought, oh, there's this right way to load the dishwasher and a wrong way to load the dishwasher. Do you think that? There is not a right way. So I can move past that one. But there may be times When you feel like doing the right thing is more important than relationships because it takes you towards your values, because it's about justice or advocacy or fairness or safety. But when we start to believe the idea that being right is more important than our personal relationships, it's more important than our family, that's when it can become an aggressive story. Aggression is sometimes part of self-protection. And when we need to protect ourselves, it makes sense that we would become aggressive. Safety is one matter, but in our own mind, speaking aggressively to ourselves is quite another. When we have unmanaged emotions and frustrations, we can end up taking it out on ourselves through really harsh criticisms, through engaging in unhealthy behaviors, neglecting ourselves. We also might take it out on other people, like coworkers, children, friends. It becomes an aggressive story in our mind when we're blaming other people for our own struggles or challenges. And we know we're stuck in the aggressive story when we can't see our role in the relationship or our contribution to a situation. It's a really powerful question that I learned from my friend and colleague, Dr. Gwen Sanders, to ask yourself and ask others, what's your role in this situation? It's a powerful tool in therapy. If one person's coming with a complaint, then the question is, well, what's your role in this situation? And it invites people to kind of zoom out and take a bigger perspective of what's happening. But if we get stuck in that aggressive story because we're afraid, we're angry, it's hard to see our role and we'll point fingers. Let me give you some example of aggressive stories that can go through our mind that we want to ease up on. And these are all examples that I've heard women tell me before. That person needs to be put in their place. A leader needs to be strong and controlling. We can't let them get away with that. They are wrong. I know what's best. There's one right way to do this. They're doing it wrong. But here's some more subtle ways that aggressive story can play out in our minds. Other people are not trustworthy. Can't count on them. Their opinion is not valuable. They're not worthy of dignity and sacredness. Other people are dangerous. My goal is the most important. And doubt is not valued, but to be avoided. Have you ever had a doubt creep in, but you squashed it down? That's fear. When we're feeling authentic and healthy, we don't have the fears about doubts. Doubts are just part of it. Doubts are normal. So I think people like to feel in charge of something. And if they're not in charge of themselves and their own emotions, it can feel extremely difficult. And we'll look to others to blame them. We'll project onto them. It's their fault. It's their problem. Again, it keeps us from our own personal responsibility. But let me tell you the cost of an aggressive story. We can become extremely isolated and mistrustful of others. In relationships, we can get blamed for trying to control or seeing things only one way. We can have expectations of others that they don't even know about, and then we get mad when they don't live up to them. Other people start to mistrust our opinion and our actions. People don't want to be around us if we only see things that way. And we can really paint ourselves into a corner with these control strategies. Ultimately, more and more control is needed over time, and that's just not sustainable. It's impossible. And when we stick with our story being the right one way of doing things and we become aggressive in our minds, we lose the benefit of diverse perspectives. It's difficult to zoom out and see the big picture. We just get so fused with these painful thoughts. If you recognize yourself in these victim stance positions or in the overly controlling, aggressive position, I want you to know nothing's wrong with you. We're often not taught how to navigate a healthy assertiveness. And as women, it becomes essential that we teach each other these strategies and learn from one another. So imagine a woman you admire who has a balanced, healthy, assertive stance. Where did you notice this? What is she doing? How does she say it? I've watched some incredible women speak up in university meetings where a man repeated an idea that a woman just said, And another woman said, oh, well, that was the idea that this person said a moment ago. And it was so powerful to see that happen, that one woman advocated for another. And we often can find it easier to advocate for one another than we can for ourselves, but it's a place to start. We can advocate for a friend, we can advocate for our children, we can advocate for our relationships, advocate at work. There's small steps that we can take towards using assertiveness and healthy boundaries to begin to offer who we truly are into the world, to find the people that can support us. And this week, I really want to challenge you to reflect on those women where you see that healthy, assertive, boundaried advocacy and agency, and see where you can adopt some of those strategies. Try applying it to an area where you feel kind of stuck, or where you feel more like you have more victim thoughts or you have more aggressive thoughts. You can imagine, what would this woman say? How might she approach this? And no matter what, don't give yourself a hard time about taking these stances. They're learning. When we get out of balance in those areas, we know it's time to come back. It allows us to have our ambitions and our creative ambitions and advocate for ourselves. In the next episode, we will be defining agency and how you can use it and feel good about it, and really embrace the agency that only you can bring, your unique creative self, and how you can take action in a way that feels completely authentic to you and what is most valuable to you. I hope that you got a lot of value out of today's podcast. It really is a powerful tool to think on this continuum, to find our balance in the middle and really move towards our own creative ambition and taking those actions that allow us to have a sense of ease when we lay down at night and less worry. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Now that you know about how to use your creativity, what will you create? Want more? Subscribe to the Modern Creative Woman digital magazine. It's absolutely free and it comes out once a month. And I know you can get a lot out of the podcast and the digital magazine. Yet when you're ready to take it to the next level, I want you to know you have options inside the membership. And if you're interested in a private consultation, please feel free to book a call with me. Even if you just have some questions, go ahead and book a call. My contact is in the show notes, and you can always message me on Instagram. Do come find me in the Modern Creative Woman on Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest at Dr. Amy Bacos. If you like what you're hearing on the Modern Creative Woman podcast, I want to give you the scoop on how you can support the podcast. You can be an ambassador and share the podcast link with 3 of your friends. You can be a community supporter by leaving a 5-star review if you think it's worth the 5 stars. And you can become a gold star supporter for as little as $3 a month. All those links are in the show notes. Remember to grab your free copy of the 21-Day Gratitude Challenge. The link is in the show notes, and you can find it at moderncreativewoman.com. Have a wonderful week, and I cannot wait to talk with you in the next episode.